Hey everyone, it's Zach Wright, founder and CEO of Grapevine Software, the virtual office platform for your remote and hybrid workforce to stay connected, informed, and engaged from anywhere in the world. Coming back with our Future of Work weekly report for this week, July 10th, 2024. And we're only going to be discussing one article from Forbes. It was published July 7th, 2024, with the title 3 important ways flexible leaders can damage teams. Now, you might be hearing that and thinking, Zach, this is a channel to pioneer the future of work. But whenever we are pioneering the future of work, we also have to, and maybe more importantly, focus on the things that need more attention. Because if we don't, then we're going to slide back to the way that we were working without consideration for the other people that can benefit from remote work, from flexible work, from hybrid work, right? And so we're going to keep it short this episode, and we're going to dive straight into highlight number 1, which is flexible leaders devalue key insight. The call out here is that over flexibility can send the message that employees' contributions are not critical, leading to disengagement. Now, if you think about this, you've probably experienced variations. If you've been in a career for a while, or even just a few years, but maybe worked under different managers or leaders, you've probably experienced a plethora of different management styles. Anything from micromanagement to the hands-off manager that thinks that they're cool and they're going to let you do what you want, right? And so basically what they're saying here is that over flexibility leans more towards that hands-off leader approach, which in some cases can be good. But the problem that they're calling out here is that with the over flexibility and the lack of structure, they didn't say this specifically, but I would call it the lack of structure and process, it can lead to employees feeling like they're not contributing to the company. And then because they feel like they're not contributing, I mean, ask yourself, would you feel engaged if you felt like your work wasn't really, it didn't matter, right? I think every single person in the world, and I could be wrong, but I think every single person in the world has a goal to bring an impact to whatever they do, whatever that is, right? And so as leaders, especially in a 100% remote environment or a hyper flexible environment, we have to take into consideration the user experience, or in this case, it would be the employee experience. Now, that's what we focus on at Grapevine Software. If you haven't checked us out, go to our website and check it out. But that's not what we're here for. When I say employee experience, I mean, you just like you would walk somebody through marketing. So the first time that they see your company, to actually prospecting and trying to connect with that person, and then going through the deal progression through the sales process. This is the customer journey. You close that person and then, or that company, and then you go into onboarding. Then you go into implementation. Then you go into customer success. Then you go into renewals and upsells, right? My background's in RevOps, so that's why I know this. But that's a go-to-market motion, right? But what we have to do at a go-to-market motion is think about the customer journey every single stage along the way. And now, as organizations become more distributed, we also have to think about the employee's journey. And that means, what does our what do our customers, in this case employees or future employees, what is their first impression of our company? That's going to be on the website. That's going to be on the content that we post. That's going to be how we celebrate what we're doing. That's going to be how we announce things. It's all these different things that are possibilities of an employee seeing our company and wanting to be a part of it, right? So that's stage one. And then we go to stage two, which is, okay, we have a job description and we have a job opening that we're going to have people apply to us for. What is the application process? What does that experience look like? Not just from a process perspective for the company, but what does it feel like for the employee going through that? So the application, do they hear anything back? Is it an automated response? Do we tell them when we chose another candidate? Do we tell them the reason that they weren't chosen, right? Now, this is if they get rejected. But let's say that they don't. Okay, so now you're going through the interview process. Think about that from your future employee perspective. What does that look like? All right. Okay, so we're going to have one interview. Does the employee know what we're about to discuss? Do they know who they're meeting? Do they have reminders telling them, hey, this is when we're going to meeting, or this is when we're going to meet? This is the type of meeting that it's going to be. It's going to be on Zoom or MS Teams or Google. Maybe you ask the employee that you're going to interview, have they used Teams? Are they familiar with it? Do they need a guide to help them set it up, right? These are little things that we have to think about as we progress through our employee experience journey, right? This isn't necessarily specifically related, but I recommend going back to Brian Chesky's conversation with Reid Hoffman on Masters of Scale and see how he talks about the customer experience at Airbnb. It's insane, and I mean that in a good way. But let's continue on this thing. So as you continue the employee experience, let's say that they go through all the interviews, they understand how it was a great experience. Now they're in the organization, it's their first day. What happens then? You give them an announcement. Most likely you should do that in Grapevine because it's going to be a better experience. You can learn about them instantly, and then you can create instant belonging. But we digress. So you want to think about these things every step of the way. And that includes even after they've been there for years, right? And especially if you were a company that was in the office during the pandemic, you transitioned to remote, you realized that everybody had a great experience in the sense of they like the work-life balance, they like this and that. But you have to make sure that you're not over flexible where there's no structure and there's no process. You still need to meet with your people in one-on-ones. You need to have team meetings. You need to have some type of metric to track their progress and their performance. So KPIs, OKRs, management by objectives, you name it. Just make sure that you have a way to measure their performance, and make sure to tie that performance to the strategy and the goals of the organization. Because when you do something like that, one, you're making sure that you're giving them managerial attention, which is a key factor in satisfaction and engagement. But then you're also giving them managerial support and attention. I can't remember which one I just said, but managerial support and managerial attention, right? So those are two things. And then you attach it to the performance metrics along with the strategy and the goals of the organization. You're creating purpose. And this is where you avoid the employees' contributions not feeling like they're critical or impactful or purposeful. And when you do this and you set in the structure and a way for employees to feel like what they do matters, that's where you're creating purpose. All right. And just to call out a statistic here to kind of drive this home on why leaders need to really care and take time to develop this, is because in this article from Forbes, 69% of people report that leaders impact their mental health as much as their doctor or therapist. So we have an obligation as leaders to take care of our employees. It's not the other way around. They don't necessarily work for us. We should be working for them. The way that I look at management and leadership is, how can I make that person's job better? Can I provide them resources? Can I be a resource? Can I keep an open door policy? Or can I at least provide clarity, strategy, and direction that allows them to have autonomy? But they still have managerial support because they have me in their pocket and I can be a resource for them. Now, let's go ahead and move on to highlight number 2. Flexible leaders demotivate. Now, the key insight here is that excessive flexibility can demotivate employees by suggesting a lack of care for results, which diminishes commitment and engagement. I'm going to go ahead and go to the other call out still within highlight number 2, because I think we can tie it together, which is research indicates that when people work harder at something, they feel more committed and dedicated. And in the article, they refer to this as the IKEA effect. So basically, if we think about IKEA, right? If you've never been there, it's a furniture store. It's a unique layout. It's a unique approach. But the furniture is able to be sold at a cheaper price because it's not put together. And so what this means is that people value what they purchase at IKEA just a little bit more because they know that they go home, they take out all the parts, they read the instructions or they don't, depends on who you are, and then they put this thing together. And because they worked hard at figuring out what it was that they needed to do to make all these different pieces of wood, nuts and bolts and screws, because they took the time to build that and put that together, they were more committed and dedicated to that, right? We have tons of IKEA furniture here in our house, and we put it together and we look at it and we actually feel accomplished when we look at it, right? And so that's what they're saying here, is that excessive flexibility can demotivate employees by suggesting a lack of care for results. So what you have to do as a leader, kind of going back to highlight number 1, is provide the employee a direction that they're working towards. And that's where the KPIs or OKRs, and I didn't mention this, but KPIs means key performance indicators. OKRs are objectives and key results. Now, at the last company that I worked at, I ran our objective and key results or OKR program. And the way that I like to do it, there's different ways that you can do it, but the way that I like to do it is always start with the strategy of the company. I mean, technically you're starting with the mission and the vision and the core values, but then underneath that you have the strategy. So what are we trying to achieve in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years? And then we break that down into an overall objective for the year, right? And so once we have that objective, we can look at it and say, okay, this is what everybody in the organization should be working towards in some way, shape, or fashion. Then we're going to take that and break it down into a quarterly objective and key result framework for the entire organization, starting at the top. So the way that we did this at the last company was, okay, this is our company quarterly objective. And then underneath it, we tried to make key results that in some way connected to every single department that we had in the organization. And then we would take those, and the next level down, which would be the C-suite, they would take the objective or the key result from the organization and turn that into their objective. They would pick 3, then they would create their own key results. And then underneath that, the next level down would do the same thing. The next level down would do the same thing until they got to the individual OKRs. And the reason that I like that and I'm bringing it up for highlight number 2 specifically is because, 1, it gave the employee a direction that they could connect to the company goals, meaning that, okay, I understand what the company is trying to do because it's clearly identified here. So that's our North Star for this quarter, for this year. But then it also, because we go down to the individual level, it also allows the employee to have their own slice of the pie that directly correlates to the outcomes of the entire organization. Because if we think about it, the individual OKRs, as they progress in their key results, ultimately moving the bar on the objective, they know that that is helping the team, their team specifically, achieve what they had as a team goal, which is ultimately helping their manager achieve what they wanted to as a team. And then the manager knows that their team executing and coming through on those OKRs are rolling up all the way up to the company level objectives and key results. So the main goal of what we're trying to accomplish this year or this quarter. And that says that the company cares about what I do as an employee. That's why I like OKRs so much. But then we take it back down to the individual level. The manager or the leader of that employee should work together on creating those OKRs. Let the employee drive it so they are the majority of that creator for their OKRs, but then make sure that it still is attached to the company strategy. But then beyond that, what you want to be able to do is bring up the OKRs in your team meetings so everybody knows that they are important and that you do care and that these results matter. Because as an individual, knowing that is going to say, you know what I'm doing, I am engaged with it because I know that it's a greater good. And that's what a lot of people want to be a part of, is something bigger than themselves. And then they're going to be committed because they help create it themselves, right? So bring it up in the team meetings. Then you want to bring it up in the one-on-ones. And then that's how you're saying as a manager, I care. If you see any signs of struggle or trouble or bottlenecks, you can have that conversation with the employee. And if you're really good, then you can connect the dots, kind of guiding them to help execute. Meaning, if there's a bottleneck on one key result and you know that another team member has a similar key result, you could say, hey, Zach, you should go talk to Lisa over here because she is working on something similar. And I think you guys could come together and execute this faster and work together. And then now the bottleneck is over. You've connected them. You gave them managerial attention and support. And you also help this other employee, which means that they're going to feel like you care about them too. So it's a full circle kind of connecting dots kind of thing. And then that is going to make them more engaged and more committed. So that's why it's so important to not be excessively flexible. You want to give them the autonomy. You want to allow them to work in a way that works for them. But at the same time, you want to kind of set these guardrails in place. And then also the direction that they need to move towards. And so whenever you have those guardrails and the direction, then it's kind of like gutter guards on an alleyway for bowling, right? So you have your bumper guards up, you roll your ball. If you go a little bit too far to the right, it's going to correct you. If you go a little bit too far to the left, it's going to correct you, right? And so that's the way that I look at this, especially as a 100% remote leader, is give them the guide or the guardrails so they know that they're free to do whatever within those realms, and then give them the direction or the strategy or the goals or or OKRs, whatever we want to call them, so they know which direction to go, and expand that to the entire team so they all know and we can work in one direction, not the group. All right. Let's go ahead and go to highlight number 4. This is actually the last highlight of this episode, but we're going to summarize it, and then we're going to give you a few key actions for leaders that they mentioned in this article. But let's go ahead. Highlight number 3, flexible leaders degrade performance. So without high expectations and a sense of purpose, performance can suffer. Leaders need to balance flexibility with clear standards and goals. So, I mean, honestly, we just talked about that. So it's those guardrails, it's the direction. You are delivering that. You're giving them the blueprint, and then you're allowing them to get creative on how they execute what it is that they need to achieve as an employee. And then this says the study shows that engagement, performance, and satisfaction are correlated. So this is the part that I always refer back to in my thesis paper, The Happy Productive Worker, and the job characteristics model, because the job characteristics model was in 1976. It was so long ago, and we still haven't found the perfect way to integrate this into how we work, right? I think that we're starting to think about it, especially with articles like this, but engagement, performance, and satisfaction are correlated, right? Now, we can't say that they're causal, but what we can do is say, okay, if an employee is engaged, it's going to have an impact on performance. And sometimes if an employee is performing well, then it's going to have an impact on satisfaction. Or if they're satisfied, then it's going to have an impact on engagement. Right? So you can do all the which ways, whatever you need to. But these are probably the key things that you need to focus on. Engagement. Is your employee engaged? Are they satisfied with what they're doing? And then are they performing well? So those are, like, we won't beat a dead horse here because we've kind of already talked about what we just talked about with, you need to find that balance between flexibility with clear standards and goals. But the metrics that you can leverage is engagement, performance, and satisfaction. So find what works for your organization. And the best way to do this is to talk to your employees. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but just talk to your employees. They're going to tell you what they need, right? Especially Gen Z and younger millennials. They are at that level where they hear all these things, they see all these things, but they're going to speak their mind. And if they don't get what they're looking for, they're going to be out the door and looking for another position. So just take into consideration your employees' way of working. What do they need? And understand that they don't work for you. You work for them, trying to help them be able to do their positions better. Strategically, operationally, satisfactory, all of the above. All right, but let's go ahead and summarize what we've talked about with, or what the article is about, and then we'll go to that key action for leaders to consider. So the first one is over flexibility can send the message that employees or employees contributions are not critical, leading to disengagement. The second one is excessive flexibility can demotivate employees by suggesting a lack of care for results, which diminishes commitment and engagement. And then the last call out here is without high expectations and a sense of purpose, performance can suffer. Leaders need to balance flexibility with clear standards and goals. And that last one, the one thing that I didn't talk about is the importance for a company to have a purpose, to have a vision, to have a mission, and to have core values. This is the foundation of your organization, and it's what gets employees understanding why they are doing the work that they do from a philosophical standpoint, from a purpose standpoint. And then you implement strategy and you implement OKRs and KPIs, or whatever goal tracker of your choice, and you tie that into the reason that the employee is there, and make sure that they understand the impact that they are driving in the organization. All right. But as we wrap this up, here are the key actions for leaders to think about. So number one, trust people and assume good intentions. This is a little bit hard for some leaders out there because they might have been burned, or they just feel like people are trying to get them and they're trying to do less work and all that kind of stuff. What I've learned is if you actually speak to your employees and you understand what motivates them, you can find a way to connect what they are motivated by to what they are doing in the organization. I've seen this firsthand. I've seen people who are failing at the position, almost fired, and then within 6 months or 9 months, they're top performers in the organization. And it all is a conversation and just trying to better understand who your employee is, what motivates them, and finding ways that you can connect what motivates them to what they're doing in their day-to-day position, right? All right. Number 2, clarify how employees' work impacts the team and organizations. We've mentioned it here. We think OKRs are a good way to do that. KPIs are a great way to do that as well. But the main thing is just understand what the employee is doing and then attach it to what the company is trying to achieve. And then the gap in between is the employee's purpose. They're trying to take what they need to do to achieve the company's overall vision or mission. Or the team, I mean, you can break it down into team visions as well, or team missions. All right, number 3, set meaningful, ambitious, and achievable targets. Again, KPIs, OKRs, but they do call out something here because OKRs, they're stretch goals, but KPIs are kind of like business as usual, or this is how we're trying to grow and we have to meet 100% of this, or at least close to it. But you want to make sure that they're not too far where they're actually demotivating. You want to make sure that they're challenging, because people actually like being challenged because they feel like they're doing something impactful or purposeful. But you don't want to make them too far where it's like there's no shot. We had this same happen whenever I was at the last company at the beginning, and it was a $26 million company, and our quota was like triple that. And it didn't make any sense because we never saw any previous history to articulate the reason for that. And honestly, our people were demotivated. We kind of stopped trying and we started focusing on what we thought could actually be done. So just make sure that you're balancing that. All right, number 4, leaders that action that leaders can take: provide feedback, coaching, and continuous improvement opportunities. This is the key. A lot of people hate on Jack Welch for his 70, 20, 10 rule. So it's like 20% are the top performers. You want to celebrate them. 70% are kind of like the normal workers, but you want to try to push them into becoming part of the 20%. And then the last 10, you get rid of them. The reason that I bring this up is that I think it's a falsified narrative, because I was in the executive MBA program from Jack Welch Management Institute. And what we learned on his approach is that 10%, whenever they were down there, you would provide feedback, coaching, and continuous improvement. And only when they couldn't be coachable, that's when you kind of push them out. But I say this to say, like, you as the leader are the person that is going to help the employee become better, right? And you have to allow that to happen. Whatever ways that you want to take that, whether it's offer them a stipend so they can take a course to improve, or have them work with HR on a career development plan, or you yourself provide them coaching. I mean, you can do all of them, right? It just matters what is available, what works for your culture, and what works for you. But these should be table stakes. It should be something that you don't neglect. Even if you're busy, you gotta find time. And then the last one is celebrate wins and recognize effort. This is the bare minimum right here. If you celebrate the wins that people are presenting, or things that are happening in the organization, and it doesn't always have to just be sales, right? Engineering is constantly working on developing new code, pushing out features. Like just today, I was on the call with our development team, and I told them, I tell them constantly, this could not happen without you. The reason that this is a reality is because of all of your hard work and effort. And I appreciate you and I thank you for that, right? I try to remind them, because companies get bogged down, especially startups, because you're going. And then you forget to celebrate the little wins, the big wins, the people wins, the development wins, all of these things. You got to celebrate them. You got to make time for it. You got to have the right infrastructure to be able to do that in a remote environment, which is Grapevine. But then also recognize that effort and be specific with it. Same thing with feedback. You want to be specific with the feedback that you're giving. Because if you're not specific, or you're not specific with recognizing their efforts, then they're not going to really know what was good behavior or what you were specifically talking about. So make sure that you're on point with that. But this one might be a little bit different from the way that we do the Future of Work weekly report, because I kind of went into some preaching, but that is the Future of Work weekly report for this week. Again, the article was 3 important ways flexible leaders can damage teams. And hopefully I provided you some ways that you can overcome that or avoid that in the future. If there was something that we missed or something that we called out that you want us to dive deeper into, drop it in the comments and let us know. But be sure to like, subscribe, and comment so we can keep getting boosted up in the algorithm to show more and more people the Future of Work weekly report and continue to develop Future of Work pioneers like yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next Future of Work weekly report.